Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order, please. It's 4:32. Meeting in the City of Kerrville Planning and Zoning Commission. Sabina, would you call roll, please?
Yes, Bob Waller,
Here.
Garrett Harmon, Don Barnett,
Here.
Michael Siegerman,
Here.
Rustin Zuber,
Here.
David Jones,
Here.
Marty Leonard. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. We have a quorum, and we're called to order. Visitors, Citizens Forum, first thing on the agenda. Any person with business not scheduled on the agenda is encouraged to briefly speak to the commission. Please fill out the speaker request form and give it to the commission secretary prior to the meeting. A number of speakers will be limited to the first 10. Each speaker limited to 3 minutes. No formal action can be taken on these items as the Open Meetings Act requires. Formal items be posted on an agenda no later than 72 hours before the meeting. If formal action is required, the items be placed on an agenda for a future meeting. Item number 2, consent agenda. All items listed below on the consent agenda are considered routine or ministerial in nature and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the items will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Item number 2A, approval of the minutes from the December 21st, 2017 meeting on page 2.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as read.
Hey, I have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second. All in favor of accepting these minutes, raise your right hand. Passes 5-0. Item 3A, consideration and final action for a replat. Sabina.
Yes, good afternoon. So this item comes before you this evening. I'll go ahead and read the entire action item here. Consideration of final action, because this Planning and Zoning Commission does have final authority over final plats concerning a request for a replat to combine 12 lots into a single lot. The title actually pretty much explains what is before you this evening. Into one lot in that BFK survey number 116, abstract number 106, in the city of Kerrville, Kirk County, Texas, comprising of lots number 1 through 12 in Block K of the BFK edition, subdivision of record in Volume 1, Page 1 of the Plat of Records of Kirk County, Texas, and being more particularly described by meets and bounds. Forward, yeah, plat. This item did go to the Development Review Committee, and as you know, that is a cross-departmental team of the city staff that has the Public Works Department that looks at streets and utilities. We also have a representative there from Atmos Gas and from KPUB to review the plat. And we did have a few comments from Atmos Gas and KPUB regarding the utilities or regarding the easements, but the Development Review Committee does recommend approval of this plat, of this replat. As you can see, the 12 lots simply being combined into a single lot to prepare it for further redevelopment of the property that has several buildings on there right now, office buildings, and so we will be looking further at future development, redevelopment on this site, but this is the first step in that process. And that's all I have on this item.
All right, thank you. Any comments from the commissioners?
How many buildings are on this site now?
Currently existing, we do have the applicant in the audience right now. How many buildings are on the property right now? Mr. Tell?
8.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was counting in my head. 8.
I couldn't tell with it.
Okay.
So being the comments you had from Atmos and K-Pub,
Just that, because it is such an old area of this city, we do have we did have some questions about easements, and but I do have, I guess, representation from the applicant that can better answer it.
I'm Don Vokel, and I'm working with Mr. Tull on this project. And at the DRC meeting, K-Pub, Bob Keeling from K-Pub brought up the fact there's a few like transformers that they put in on the property. They're not in easements, they're just service transformers for their buildings. It's not like a transmission line going through. And John Raymer from Atmos Gas said there's a line that they don't have an easement for that goes from Barnett Street kind of northeast through the property up to Bulwer. And so Trey has talked to both of them, and I told him after the meeting he needs to get with them and talk, see what they want to do. What we're going to do with K-Pub and also with Atmos Gas, there are no easements on the plat now, and so we're not going to put any on the plat, but we are going to get with them and provide them any easements they need that, you know, for that transmit, the gas line and the transformers for K-Pub. Right now, it's the Atmos doesn't even really have the line located, and would have to locate it and show all that. So we're going to take care of them as a separate instrument, since there's no easements on the plat to begin with anyway.
Okay. But you may realign that easement based on the development of that site.
I don't think that's going to have to be done. They already did it once. It goes up and it makes a 90-degree jog around a building that they put in, but I don't think that's going to be affected as a tray.
We'll be able to work around those existing ones.
Yeah. So what they want us to do is have it located and give them like a 10-foot easement through the property that we can do and reference this plat and say this is part of the, you know, BFK.
You'll lay that out in the next drawing.
It's going to be done after the fact.
Okay.
After the plat gets done, then we're going to give them the easements they need.
I got you.
The lines are already there, all of them, and so all it is we're going to take care of them.
Identify them.
It's not a platting issue, but an easement issue for them after the fact.
Is it an active gas line?
Yes.
And they don't have it located, they don't have it staked on the property now?
Well, it's there, but they don't. The process would be they would hire us to, well, we'd get with Dig Test and let them locate the line through the property. And then we go out and survey it and create an easement that H.E. Butt Family Foundation would sign off to Atmos. And the same for K-Pub. If they have a transformer they want an easement around, would do it. The K-Pub is more of just a service line and a service transformer for their buildings. The other Atmos is a line that goes through that they don't have an easement for, so they're happy to get the easement after the fact. And Trey's talked with both John Raymer and Bob Keeling.
Like whatever plans you have with the property, you'll have to adapt around.
Right. And the reason this came up is because they wanted to do some newer buildings and they would be crossing property lines. So at the time, I think he even talked to Trent Robinson when he was here. And Trent said the best way to do this is to do it. They're not gonna ever sell any of these lots. They're gonna keep it all together. But just to make it one big compound and take the individual lot lines off, that way they can build wherever they want to. So that's the reason.
It takes away the setbacks.
Well, on the down, you know, the property lines
Yeah.
that are on the as platted,
Yeah.
doing away with all those, then there's no issue with building over a property line.
Sure.
I think it's important that that easement be delineated,
Oh, it's going to be. And
and
see,
so nothing can be built on.
right, and the line's already there, and they have it in without an easement. I think he told me on lots 4 and 5, which were the original Butt Foundation properties, you know, the little red rock houses, that there is an easement that's kind of vague on the back end of that, but the rest of the property, there's no easement. So they have a gas line through the property. And back then, it wasn't all H.E. Butt Foundation when that line was put in. So I don't know how they got it done, but we're gonna fix it for them, not as a plating issue, but as get them an easement. And to also know where it is, so when Trey's building, he'll know, where to
That's the
stay with.
concern.
Big concern.
So when the replat is done and this is all one lot, theoretically, not theoretically, but technically speaking, it increases the amount of building square footage can be put on the property because it removes all of the interior, setbacks and encumbrances. Is that correct?
Well, it removes the constraints of the setbacks. I couldn't confirm 100% that it would actually increase the square footage. It just would break it up more.
So if you replat this into one lot and the owner decided they wanted to take all of those buildings out to put one large building on that lot, they can do that.
Isn't Earl Garrett our?
If they met
zoned
the
RT?
setback requirements.
Well, if they
Yeah.
if they replat it into one lot, as long as they meet the exterior setback requirements, they don't have any interior setback
Exactly.
requirements. So they could build one large building if they chose to.
No, I'm just gonna change this.
Well, right now, and there has been some history of discussion with previous planner, at least one previous planner, and the applicants and the staff here, probably other folks involved as well on the staff. However, the site is zoned RT, which is residential transition. So we have been talking about options under how to fit within the RT, or whether the entire thing really should come forward as a planned development district. So it is very possible that you may be seeing this the development again.
Okay, so that I understand, but what I'm saying is if in the future, we replat it into one lot, and they came back and said, I want to put one large building on this property meeting all setback requirements, the city would, subject to the approval of the plans, the city would have no way to object to that, correct?
If it fit within the zoning regulations, and I
Tries to
think
fit
that's,
within the RT regulations.
Right.
3,000 square feet.
and
They
right.
look like
and-
a residence.
Okay.
Right, which would probably be difficult for them to
Yes.
do. So, so it is very likely that you will be seeing the actual development coming forward. As I said, this is the first step.
Okay.
Now, if this were a commercially zoned piece of property, yes, I think we would be talking about a lot of different ramifications. But with the zoning as it exists today, a lot of those are reduced because of the zoning that's on the property, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's already RT.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept the replat as presented.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes 5-0. At this point, the next, I'm going to ask that we move number 5A on the agenda up ahead of 4, because it looks like 4 is going to maybe take some time.
Just 1 second. Are there a lot? Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thanks, Drew.
Planning Commission did request that the discussion on pole banners come back to you one more time. As we've gone through, oh, that's not there it is. Excuse me. You've got it in front of you there, in your backup. Just wanted to bring this before the commission, let you get one more glance at it before we move this on to City Council. I believe we've gotten all the changes that we talked about at our last commission meeting. I'd be pleased to present it in further detail or answer any questions. We are asking that you approve the recommendation to City Council, and we can get this moving forward.
All right.
Any questions?
Any comments from the commissioners?
Looks like what we
Looks like
talked
the
about.
language we had.
Yes. Twice.
If there's no questions, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed change as presented.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Let me ask. Okay. Okay, thank you for letting me move that up. We'll get back to number 4, public hearing, consideration, and action. 4A is a public hearing, consideration and action, rezoning and recommendation to City Council. Public hearing, consideration, and action concerning a recommendation of request for rezoning of 3 lots, 829, 837, and 851, Clay Street, being lots 12, 11, and part of lot 10, lot 13 and 46, and 1 lot, 619 Murda Street, part of lot 13, and part of lot 14, from RT, Residential Transition Zoning District, to 21N, North Side Zoning District, case 2017-098. Sabina.
This case comes before you because the applicant has proposes to put in a parking lot, and because he needs additional parking, is my understanding, for his commercial center that is located on Sidney Baker in here. The site that is being proposed, there's actually only one of the lots that's being proposed for a parking lot that would be located, sorry about the pointer kind of getting erratic here, is on this lot that has access to Clay Street and comes all the way back to the center that has frontage along Sidney Baker. So the original discussion really centered on the parking lot to be able to have the permission or the permit to apply for installing a parking lot. The zoning on the property, because it's zoned RT, go back to that slide here. Everything that you see in the kind of pinkish red in here is zoned RT, residential transition. And as you heard just a moment ago, that does have a restriction that there are some limited commercial uses that are permitted in the residential transition as long as the square footage stays at 3,000 square feet or less. and that the structure or the building either remains a home, a house, or is constructed to look like a house, a residence. So the original discussion was to whether or not a parking lot could be installed, and because it is going to be serving the commercial use, that my determination was that the use would not be in compliance with the zoning that is currently on the property, which is the RT, either as a freestanding parking lot in and of itself, because there is no use at parking lot right now that is listed in any of our use tables. We do see that in some other cities for your city parking lots and things like that, but we don't have that as a standalone use. As a support use for certainly we have parking lots all over the place, it would need to meet the zoning that is that the primary use has to be under. So the existing center is zoned N21, which is North Commercial District, and so that is the request that is coming forward. The adjoining properties, so we actually have two applicants. So the second applicant in this case, Mr. Ray, owns properties adjacent to this lot, a larger lot in this area, and again, my cursor is not playing. And then this area that is shown in the pink, but it is actually the parking lot for this commercial building in here that has a I believe a couple of lease spaces in this elongated building that exists here. So you have a site that's split down the middle by a zoning line between the RT for the parking lot and the N21, which is the actual commercial use that the parking lot is serving. So the request is essentially for three properties, for this property in here, and then curving around and kind of making this an L shape on this property here, a larger site that actually has some pavement down, and I'll show you some photos in a minute here. Actually, some of them you've already seen. On this property here, that and I'm not exactly sure whether that's legally non-conforming. In other words, was put in when the property was under a different zoning scheme, or what, I'm not exactly sure under what circumstances this parking was put in here, but it also does not meet currently the current zoning, which is the RT. The site next door to it, a smaller lot, and then the subject site again, which currently has a house on it that I believe is vacant at this time. So that gives you a synopsis of what is before you this evening.
Sabrina, as we have houses around the town here that are in this transitional commercial but look residential homes, there's no guidelines for how many parking spaces they're required to have or not have. They just need to be 3,000 square feet or less and look residential. There's really not a guideline for that, about how many parking spaces are available?
The parking requirement it would depend on the use. For instance, if it were to come in as an office use, then they would have to put in one parking space for every 300 square feet of office space. If it's retail and there is some limited, I'm sorry, retail is not permitted in the RT, but if it were, it really depends on the type of use. There is no maximum in terms of parking that would be, the assumption being that you don't really need to have a maximum of parking. Usually it's a minimum. Most codes.
So if it's a commercial operation, they should have 300 square feet one spot per every 300 square feet.
If it's office space.
If it's office utilization.
Right, a conversion to an office, we would look at the parking to make sure that they have enough parking to make the conversion from a single family, which is only 2 spaces for that unit, to whatever would be the calculation for the office. So there would be an additional parking
if it's
requirement.
residential, but if it's transition where they have some sort of commercial operation, their business operation.
We would look, and possibly, quite possibly, there would have to be a few additional spaces that would have to be installed in order for that transition to occur, for the conversion to occur. That's correct.
Okay.
So in our analysis, we do look at the future land use plan. We look at impacts to the area, and certainly we do take the public input into consideration. This is a legislative action because it is a rezoning. A rezoning is an ordinance. So eventually the ordinance would go to the city council. The city council has ultimate authority over ordinances. And as such, this commission has the authority under state law to make a recommendation, and it is in fact required to make a recommendation one way or the other before the city council can consider this type of an ordinance, this type of a zone change. As such, because it is an ordinance, there is public input that is required. There is public input that is, public notice that is required, and public hearing here, and then later on at the city council level as well. At this point, I do need to make a correction in the staff report, and there are additional copies over here if anybody would like to have a copy of the staff report here. We did have a lot of people respond to the notice that was put in the paper, and also to the notices that were sent out. In that staff report, there is reference to the current land use plan, and earlier today, in fact, I had gone through and when I prepared the staff report and found a land use plan that showed residential for this particular area for the lots that are in question, and was asked actually to confirm that. And when I went through to confirm, I found the latest land use plan is actually this one that is up on the slide, and not the one that is in your staff report. That staff report went out last week, and this is what I found just today. In 2002 is when this land use plan was adopted, and it does show commercial in this area. Now, there are certainly other things to take into consideration as well. In the analysis, we also look at impacts to utilities. We look at traffic impacts in a very general way. And just because the land use plan shows an area for a certain land use classification does not mean necessarily that the time is right for that area to be rezoned. In addition to that, you are all involved with the comprehensive plan update now, and certainly the land use plan will be a part of that. So we will be amending or looking at reviewing the 2002 land use plan. In 2008, there was an amendment to this land use plan where there was an associated ordinance. The comprehensive plan is also ultimately an ordinance that's adopted by council. In 2008, the city council did adopt a revision to this land use plan. There is not a map associated with it either in the city secretary records nor in mine that I found today. So there is there's a bullet point description of what changes are involved there, but there is no graphic associated. So this is the latest adopted in 2002 graphic of the land use plan that I could find. And the more you zero in on it, it becomes even more pixelated, and it becomes even less legible. The area that is involved in here, I believe we are looking at this area in here, and as you see, it is commercial on that land use plan. So that is a correction that I need to make, and my apologies for the confusion here. That the records simply were not very clear. So the current zoning, as I described, is RT. There is some existing paving on some of the lots involved, and then there is a home that appears to be vacant on that Clay Street, on the lot that is proposed as a parking lot. Certainly to the east, you have additional 21N zoning, and that extends across Sidney Baker. To the west, across Clay Street, there is more RT zoning. Now And then also to the south there is RT zoning, and to the east there is RT zoning. Farther to the east, beyond Murda, there's R1 zoning and single-family uses on that side. But to show you here a little bit better on the map here, so on this side, there is a single-family home existing, an older single-family home that's been there for quite a while, that that is being used as a residential home right now. And as I mentioned in the staff report, this rezoning, well, over the years, this home has really been sort of left isolated in that single family without additional residential to the south here, but that remains intact. There was, unfortunately, over the holidays, because of the skeleton crew that we had, but also because of some confusion as far as the deeds, which were rectified and clarified, but originally this property was understood to also be under this rezoning request, and it certainly is not. In fact, we do have a letter in protest from this property owner against this rezoning. So I wanted to make that clarification as well. It did not affect the notices that went out in terms of number. In fact, we, because of that, actually over-notified, but the number of people that were required to be notified in this case did not change once we made that correction. So we have one single-family home in here, and then the lots that are in question, and then we have 2 additional homes that are left in here. There is one house here that is being used as is one of those RT type uses that is now being used as a counseling office. It's my understanding. And then farther here, and you'll see in the photos here, is the Zion Lutheran Church. Across the street, on this corner here, is a multifamily. It's an apartment complex, a kind of low-scale apartment complex in here. There's a church, and you'll see in the slide here, also in a residential style. There are about 10 homes as you travel down Clay Street here toward Barnett. And then about in here is where you recently recommended approval, and the City Council did approve the conversion of an office to a 3-tenant office space or office building to a 3-plex. So those are essentially the uses here. And then as you go farther up into this area is R1 zoning with single-family homes here, R1A zoning with single-family homes as you progress farther into this area here. So those are the uses within the area. Now this is pretty much impossible to see, but it is in the staff report that where there's a comparison of the uses from the requested rezoning to the existing zoning classifications. Those are further broken out in your staff report as well, because I know that you probably don't know off the top of your head what is involved in the business 1 and business 2, retail 1 and 2. Those are broken out in the staff report so that you can better compare the existing, which is really what a rezoning is all about in the analysis, is comparing what could be built today or rebuilt today with what could be built tomorrow under the requested rezoning. So I'm staying here at the corner of Murda and Sidney Baker, looking across at so this entire corner here is zoned N21, and we're looking down Murda in this direction here toward one of the lots, the one that's on Murda. And then just going a little farther toward that intersection, just to give you an idea of the topography in through here. But now you can start to see that the entrance there to the parking lot that I referenced, that's on Murda. And a little farther down, you can see there is fairly wide driveway back in here to get into the parking, and then you see the second tenant building in here. And then turning actually more toward the north, Then again, this is MRTA here. You're seeing this, at this stop sign is where MRTA actually turns to the right here and turns into Ramshell. You're looking at the beginning of some single-family homes in that area. Turning now to back around to the left here is the lot that is under consideration, one of the lots, that parking lot. So again, this lot here is zoned N21. The lot where this parking, the circulation aisle, is still zoned RT. Now we're looking toward the single-family home that is right at the corner there at MRTA and Clay. See a lot of the screening here that is the established landscaping in the area. Now, standing on the driveway at that lot that is under request for rezoning into the commercial area here, and you see the transition here from the commercial, which is zoned N21, across MRTA and into the single-family area here as we move west along MRTA. Now we're nearing the intersection at MRTA and Clay, looking back into that single-family home, the existing single-family home right on the corner. And then turning to look down Clay toward Main. You see that low apartment complex over here on the right, and then the single-family home again is on the left here. Just a little better shot of the apartments there, and then turning back around to look into the single-family home. So this then coming down Clay is that first site that is being requested for the N21 zoning. Largely vacant. There is a driveway in here, but it leads really into an unfinished lot. Then looking a little farther down Clay into the larger second lot. And that does have a parking lot on it. Now we're looking back toward the N21 zoned commercial center. And then looking at the paving. Yes.
I looked at this property today, and the property you're pointing out right there has a couple of buildings that are beyond the property line for the commercial zoning on City Baker. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, on this, on this one that has the.
Yes, there are two buildings back there that are commercial buildings that are not residential in appearance, and they're existing on
Right.
a piece of property that is zoned RT.
They are zoned RT. I'm not sure if they are grandfathered uses. I'm at this point I am assuming that they are, that they were existing prior to the zoning regulation, and or how they were enforced on this property. And then looking at the this is the house that I was referring to that it would be removed in order to install the parking lot. Just a little closer view of that. So it's my understanding that this building is to be removed in order to make room for the parking. And then turning back along Clay into that church on the west side of Clay. And then turning back around now and looking down toward the other two homes that would be existing and would remain. A little farther down.
The zoning request stops at that telephone pole there, right there?
I believe.
About where your arrow is?
I believe it's actually this one. I
No,
believe it's
continue
actually-
on.
Back this way.
Towards us? Yeah, that's what I thought.
And I believe the applicant would also like to address the commission in a little bit
So in essence, what they're looking to do here is to change the zoning on this and turn these into parking lots that directly adjacent to houses.
There's only one request, I think, for a parking lot
Well, but there's a request for a zoning change
for zoning change.
that just allows anything that's done under the N21 zoning, it can be done there. They mean, today it's a parking lot to mark a building.
That's
It
correct.
doesn't have to be a residentially
That's correct.
appearing building.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is with a standard rezoning request, and that's why I pointed out that really it needs to be a comparison of the entire zoning that's before you, because later on, as a staff, we cannot pick and choose what part of the zoning we can enforce and which part we
Again,
cannot.
hypothetically, they could double the size of the commercial rental center on that property if the zoning was changed.
And N21 has a much broader range of uses than the RT.
Right.
And then just looking down toward the into that area, it's kind of hard to see, but the 10 homes that I was referring to that extend from this point beyond down toward Barnett. This is that house that is being used as a counseling center, and then the church beyond that, Zion Lutheran. And I turn back around here, and I'm taking a shot back up Clay Street, just to show you where it T intersects into Murda. There is a house at the end of that where the T intersection occurs.
Go back one slide if you would, Sabrina, to the church parking lot, which right here dumps onto Clay Street, correct?
Back one more.
Isn't that, no, there's the church right there.
Talking
Next to the
about-
counseling center,
Yeah,
that's Zion Lutheran's parking lot
right.
Right next
that
to
comes
it.
into
Correct.
Clay.
Zion Lutheran has about 3 or 4 access points along Clay.
Yeah.
Yes, and then there's also it does have one access point, I believe 1 or 2 on Sidney Baker, but I think this is really the majority of where the parking
I don't
lot
think we have any access
is.
to Sidney Baker. I think it's all either on Clay or on, whatever that street is on the other side.
Barnett.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Is that Barnett? Yes, that's Barnett. That's correct. I should know, it's my street.
Now we're actually behind the center, looking back toward. This is the rear alley, if you will, of the center here, looking back toward, and the Clay would be back in this direction here.
So that's the house that's being want to be removed.
That's where they want the parking lot. But
Well, this is actually we're on our way there. Now we're traveling down farther back now toward
Okay.
the north, and you'll see that in a second here.
This is the strip mall in Sidney Baker.
This is the rear,
Mhm.
yes. And a little farther down. So there is some fence in here, but then where this opening, this is the home that is my understanding is to be removed. So the parking would be.
So that's the property line where the
here.
fence is?
The
Between the
parking
two
lot
zonings?
between the N21 and
The
the
RT.
RT, I believe that's roughly where, yes.
Mistake there, yeah.
And then the front of the center that is needing the additional parking. And then just turning a little bit to show you more of that center. Like that. And then this is the drive that actually goes back and would connect back up with the drive that alley drive that I was showing you earlier. So with the impacts to the surrounding properties, what we definitely complied with the legal requirements to send out letters within 200 feet. We did have received some protests back from property owners or representatives of properties within this area, some just outside of the notification area, but we did receive letters from really other parts of the city as well. But where you see the little green dots is where we received protests, responses from area property owners. So those are the little green dots, and that is in addition to what is in the staff report. This map was created just today, and to show, to give you some idea of what you're starting to see in terms of responses. So as I said, we did notify in the paper, and we sent 24 letters out. 2 of those were to the property owners that are involved in this request. The other 22 then to area property owners that live that own property within 200 feet. We received 18 responses before the start of this meeting, and an additional 3 that you do not all have a copy of. Mr. Aller, you have the additional 3, but we did put that into a packet for you. 2 of those representing land that is within the 200-foot notification area. There is a provision in the zoning ordinance for protests of property owners that represent 20% of the land that is abutting or adjoining the property in question that is the subject of rezoning. We will still need to do the analysis of whether that would force a requirement for a supermajority vote to approve this rezoning at the city council level. That doesn't apply to you, but we just wanted to make you aware of that we will be reviewing that as it comes in.
Okay, thank you for that summary. I think we need to go into a public hearing. I'll open a public hearing at 5:20. Anybody wishing to speak before this commission needs to approach the podium, state your name and address. I have some speaker request forms, and these people that have filled these out, I'll call them. First, Mary Lee Stewart.
I'm Mary Lee Job Stewart. I was born in Kerrville, and I have lived at 600 Murda Street since 1940. 600 Murda Street is right in the middle of Clay Street, so if you go up the hill, you run into the front of my house. And it's in very poor condition, but I love living there. My property's rated R1, and I feel that it will be affected by a change in the neighborhood to N21 or commercial, up and down Clay Street and Murda Street. If Mr. Motherall gets a commercial rating on 829 Clay, I understand he doesn't have to make it a parking lot now or later. It can become any one of various uses. It could be a drive-through Chinese restaurant discharging pickup food customers onto Clay Street. Think about the traffic on Clay, Murda, and Rempshaw. 2 of those streets go by my house. The 3rd one stops at my house. Mr. Ray could do the same thing. He has preferred not to state the reasons to apply for this change. In addition, this change could open the door to more lots in our area going commercial. I'm told that Mr. is at 714 Clay built a structure that conformed to RT requirements but looks like a home. It is suitable for commercial use. I've also been told that he has had big problems getting tenants and has requested to turn it back into apartments. Does this show that this area should stay residential or go commercial? Please keep our quiet, peaceful residential neighborhood. This area is defined by the Kerrville 2050 highlighted category of high priority. Quote, affordable, attainable housing at an 89% rating. That was the 4th highest rating. Here's a quote from their website. Incentivize improvement of older housing stock. More and smaller options for seniors besides assisted living. Including rentals. Housing stock that fits income levels of working people. Mixed-use housing downtown or within walking distance of retail and services. I think this describes the block that covers 700 and 800 Clay Street.
Ms. Stewart, there is a 3-minute time limit on these talks, up to 10 people.
Do I have another minute?
I'll give you about 15 seconds.
The apartments at 850 Clay have 36 units. It's HUB subsidized and handicapped approved. These residents can be seen walking on all 3 of our streets. Please don't turn their neighborhood, mine, or anybody else's commercial. That's what Sidney Baker is for. Clay Street, 853, belongs to my neighbor of over 50 years. She just buried her husband on the 12th of this month. She got this notice on the 10th. I think it's unconscionable that she's having to go through this right now. And I'll stop now. It's
Okay.
hard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker request form is Wayne Franklin.
3 minutes goes fast, I'll be faster than that. My name is Wayne Franklin, and I actually live on 916 Remshill, just looking down over Clay Street, but I also own the property on 821 and 819 Clay, which is adjoining that. My concerns are that we have a business district just on the other side of Clay, on Sidney Baker. What we're trying to do is bring that same business registration type right onto Clay Street. So it doesn't make any sense to me. We're talking about increased traffic. What we already have is that retirement community on the corner. That's a handicap and a HUB subsidized. It's a very nice looking community. You know, to start moving Sidney Baker type traffic and business right down Clay Street, right next to a retirement community like that, I think it's the wrong thing to do. And as has been mentioned, that new N21, it allows far beyond simply a 3,000 square foot building. It allows, you know, all these things are listed in here. Car dealerships, I mean, it's a regular commercial listing. So I really don't think that we're going in the right direction by moving Sidney Baker's commercial part right into a residential Clay Street neighborhood. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Julie Reeves.
Thank you. I'm Julie Reeves, 853 Clay Street, and I'm here with my mother, Ramona Reeves. And I would just like to say that I feel some towns are really seeking to preserve their old neighborhoods. They want children to grow up and come back after college and save their old town and renovate it and revitalize it. A town needs people to thrive and grow, and our old neighborhoods are full of life and history. History because you have elderly people who can tell stories of 80 years ago. That's valuable and important. this is a place where there were many houses full of families making memories. And if we have a vision for this town, then why would we ruin our old neighborhoods to benefit the pocketbook of people who do not even live in that neighborhood? Why are their needs more important than the families that bought homes there, raised families there, hoped to live out their days there, made an investment in Kerrville and in that neighborhood? And what about the property values that's going to happen to those families through no fault of their own? People deserve to be able to live and enjoy their home with some sense of privacy. They deserve to be able to walk safely in their neighborhood. And I think we have to decide what kind of town we want to be. One that embraces old neighborhoods, or one that trades people and the peace of their homes for parking lots and businesses that don't fit in a neighborhood and kind of don't even fit your own 2050 plan that's in the works. Housing downtown or within walking distance to retail and services. You have that right now in that neighborhood, and you have the potential to really ruin it. I hope that we say no to rezoning this neighborhood and to other neighborhoods that may eventually be at risk, because this seems to be a precedent-setting event to me. The house on the corner of Clay and Murda has already suffered for the zoning issues, allowing encroachment. Mom and Dad worked hard to buy it, to keep it, to raise us kids in it, and they love it, and they care for it as well as they can. Daddy passed away on December 30th, but he loved taking care of that house, and he did the best he could at the age of 93. So businesses around private homes can bring traffic and noise and trash and the death of a neighborhood feeling. And I think we have to decide if we want to be responsible for that or if we want to save old neighborhoods and encourage revitalization within town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for your loss. Those are the only speaker forms that I have filled out. If anybody else would like to come to the podium. Yes, sir. Then we'll get to the applicants next. Yeah.
Larry Eskridge, I live at 1000 Ramshall, and I'd like to point out, if this goes through and it becomes commercial and there are more businesses in there, there's going to be an increase in traffic, and right now, Ramshall is not a safe street. Cars can pass one another only if one pulls off onto the basically unpaved shoulder. And there's also a lot of trash that gets thrown out there. And I feel like I'm taking my life in my hands to pick up the trash, and I really don't want to see any more traffic out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Motherall? Mr. Ray?
First of all, I'm Bruce Motherall, and I own the property at 820 Sidney Baker, and also the property 829 Clay. So we are to correct, I guess, a statement. This process was started before Mr. Reeves passed, and I am very sorry that timing-wise it didn't fit with what you have been going through, and I certainly don't want to create a problem for you. That's the last thing that I have an interest in. Sabina has said that our records show this property is land use marked as commercial, and so from that perspective it is already commercial. The other thing that I would like to point out to you, many of the units, housing and businesses and things that are there on Clay now are beautiful, well-maintained, and an attribute to the city. There are a number of those units, and if you haven't gone up there yourself and physically looked at them, there are a number of them that are dilapidated, run down, trash everywhere, that kind of thing, that we hope to eliminate that sort of thing by doing what we're doing. We want to clean up the area. We want to make a positive part of the neighborhood. And that is our goal, has been from day one. As an example of that, and Sabina showed you the front of our building over there. When we bought that property, it was a pretty well run down area, and we went to the expense of cleaning it up and putting in a very, what I consider a very attractive building. We maintain it, and we want to continue that type of an operation. Now, as far as putting something else on this site, the site is only 75 feet wide, and you can't put, as they have alleged, a drive-through thing on there. It won't fit, won't work. This has never been something that we have even considered. And when I first talked to Sabina, my idea was to leave it RT, that's fine, but to use it for parking, additional parking. It'll primarily be employee type parking is generally what it'll be. We have a neighbor that adjacent to our commercial center that although we have asked them not to, they park their cars and trucks and things on our site, and it limits what our tenants can do. This is something perhaps that you all need to talk about, and that is people who don't own property using other people's property, and that's not a good situation. So it is, in a sense, forcing us to spend money and to look elsewhere to expand the parking for our building that we have tried to maintain and to grow. I don't know of any. I have pictures of some of the other areas in there that, and perhaps it would be good for you all to see them. Sabrina did a pretty good job of showing most of it, but I have pictures that I will show you.
Thank you. Bruce, do y'all intend to just build a parking lot? That's your intention?
That's the intention, entirely.
Entirely, of that whole lot space?
Yes.
No other structures?
No other structures on the site.
No expansion of the structures on Sidney Baker?
Pardon me?
No expansion of the structures that come off of Sidney Baker that are sitting there?
No.
That would be pushed back towards this way?
No, none whatsoever. Solely, totally parking. And
Would it be paved parking? I mean, like
yes.
concrete or?
Probably, yes.
Concrete or asphalt?
Yeah, it will be paved parking, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the only issue with that is, and I understand what you're trying to do, but the issue is, once you change the zoning to an N21 zoning, it really doesn't matter what you do now or what you want to do now.
Yeah.
You open up that for development to N21 zoning, and when you don't own the property anymore, or if you decide next year, and I'm not pointing you out, I'm just saying an owner of property there. If that person decides next year, well, this year I want to put a parking lot on it, but now it's possible for me to put 3 more units there to lease. And again, I'm not pointing to you. It could be anybody that owns the property. It could be 5 years from now that somebody owns the property and decides they want to come in there and they want to develop a retail center, or they want to develop a lease, a strip center. Whatever is allowed, whatever it fits. It might be, 750 feet. of retail space in small bays, they would be allowed to do that under the N21 zoning.
They would be allowed also under RT up to 3,000 square
Right,
foot.
but it would have to be a residentially,
It looks, yes, it
like
looks.
like a house like there are now.
Yeah.
It would be,
That's correct.
yes, sir.
And frankly, I don't mind at all if there is a way to do it, and I have not talked to anybody about it, but I don't mind at all limiting whatever can be used on that property to parking.
If we went to a conditional use permit, which would allow you to build a parking lot, would you agree to that?
Sure.
I don't think
I don't think
this zoning allows for that.
it does not. That's the-
Currently, we do not have that process in our
Right.
zoning code. I've worked in other cities where they did. They had it, the parking lots were listed as conditional uses. We simply don't have that in our zoning code today. That is an option, potentially eventually for the city council to create that tool, that avenue. And that, if we had something like that today, that would have been something that I would have recommended to Mr. Motherall, but we didn't have that in our
Ideally,
ordinance.
you can take the back half of that lot and create parking that is not accessible from Clay Street, but is accessible from your existing center, where you, if you want
I can
employees.
yes, I can do that today, but it already has access to Clay.
I know, but I understand that the people that live on Clay Street are not looking for more traffic.
Yeah. I have looked at the traffic out there over a period of time, and the gentleman that lives up on Remschel is correct about his that portion of the street, but the big part of the traffic that comes from down Clay comes from Remschel. Now, the locals who have business or residents on Clay, yes, they use it, certainly. But the big portion of the traffic comes off of Holsworth, I'm sorry.
Holsworth, oh yeah.
And so, now, the...
Bruce, excuse me, I might cut you off pretty quick.
I'm sorry.
If Joe Ray would like to make some comments.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I'm sorry for your loss. I liked your husband. I always saw him in the yard taking care of those deer. I'm sorry for your dad. And it is a bad time. The paperwork was filed a couple of weeks before, I think before he passed away. But basically, Mr. Motherall explained it to you what's going on there. He needs some more parking. And my property is already being used. I bought it 30 years ago, and it's still like it was 30 years ago because I have not came down here to get it rezoned. So it's I've sat on it for 30 years, and I'm hoping we get it rezoned because I intend to put some duplexes or build some more rentals for low-income rentals that people can afford. The parking lot, my main parking lot comes off Sidney Baker, goes straight through Clay Street. It's all concrete. And basically there's 2 office buildings in that RT area that were grandfathered in. They were there when I bought it, and it just needs to be corrected. I've been using it. It's been used, let's say, for commercial use. And I think by changing it, we'll correct it to what it really is. I know it's stamped RT, but I haven't built anything on it either. And I think it was grandfathered in. I've got a huge concrete parking lot adjoining Mr. Motherall's property, where my folks park. And I got a parking lot on the side of Murder Street, a small one that's, for some reason, it's a little slice of RT there where the concrete's at. And then the other lot is right next door to the Reeveses. And I acquired that 10 years ago. It's probably 50 feet by 200 feet. And I keep it mowed. And basically, I don't plan to make any changes at this time. But I think it needs to be corrected. It needs to be changed to commercial use. And I understand the neighbors' points. I don't blame them. But as long as I've been there, I think that these people know me. I haven't bothered them. I don't bother anybody. Just keep the grass mowed and keep the place clean and so forth. So, you all have any questions? Anybody?
Yeah, I said a couple of more things.
Quickly.
We have 3 inches.
Okay, the pictures that I gave you, if I might, I would like to walk you through them so that you know where they are, similar to what Sabina did with her presentation. The top of the picture is the counseling house at Zion Lutheran Church. The next group of pictures, it is 3 pictures there. They show the property that Mr. Franklin owns, and if you will notice the condition of there, and the fences and the other things, trash and so on. And then the next group of pictures is the group up there of Ms. Reeves' place. And what concerns us, talking about a neighborhood and the quality of the neighborhood, when you have dilapidated fences and trash and things laying around, that does not connotate good maintenance and quality within the area. And the article that her daughter put in the paper this morning, they talk about wanting children to go off to college and then come home and help the area grow. Well, there are several things there that they don't address. Number one,
One right here.
pardon me. By and large, Kerrville has not awarded or made available a lot of good-paying jobs here. We need to work on that. That's one of the issues. Most of the young people that leave don't ever come back, and that's sad. We need some way to get them to stay. Then the next picture is that of the apartment complex. Of course, you saw that. Then as you go down the street there, you have a church that is very nice. They've redone a structure, and then a lot next to it has trash on the lot, right out front. And these are the things that concern us. We want a good quality neighborhood. We want to be a good neighbor. And that's really all we're after.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to make any comments? Approach the podium, please. No. Oh.
You're up.
I think you're up.
You already spoke.
Bruce Drakey, 821 Earl Garrett. I come here as a commercial broker. We deal with this all the time. Drew, this is one of our biggest problems in town, 47 zones. I'm sure you haven't heard that already. And this is a real issue that we need to address. But when we look at the RT zones here in town, they're some of the most successful mixed zone. It's the only mixed zone that's really been successful. We look at Earl Garrett, we look at Water Street, we see the success of that, and Clay Street hasn't seen that success yet. And it's very interesting, and I've worked with Mr. Itzen for many years, and it is a real challenge right now on Clay Street there. But I think you all have identified one of the real issues that is challenging is that the petition before us is bringing some very heavy uses like fuel sales and vehicle sales, including used car sales and such, to Clay Street. But we haven't heard any uses that are desired that aren't currently allowed in the zone. And I realize we don't have a parking use, but we can put off-street parking behind a residence or a building that looks like a residence, like the office I have at 821 Earl Garrett and the office I have at 615 Earl Garrett. We have parking behind those structures. And at 615 Earl Garrett, we access the alley behind, which goes to another church property. So the ability to create parking behind there for employees and such exists now with the current zone. And if we're looking at doing multifamily or affordable housing on the other property, that's a conditional use in the RT zone and encouraged. And that also fits with some of the goals for that part of town, which aren't cemented yet, but which a lot of people who are involved in redevelopment of this area are talking about already, about how we can take these neighborhoods and expand that affordable housing within walking to HEB and downtown and jobs and stuff like that. And so as a commercial broker, this is something we deal with all the time. It's something that we see. It's hard for me to understand exactly why we would bring the N21 back into Clay Street, but maybe a PDD, because then you can limit the uses. And if that's necessary to get done what they're trying to accomplish, that might be a way to find a balance between Sidney Baker and Clay Street that might be more appropriate.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to say one more quick thing, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to say that I'm a little disturbed that houses on the street are being criticized as being, basically junky. A lot of elderly people live on that street. They are valuable resources in this town, and I realize that they don't keep their houses perfect. They can't get out there and do things. Now that Daddy has passed away, I think, my brothers and sister and I are going to be trying to be a little more involved in helping get things a little more shipshape there. And it's important to us, but it doesn't mean that just because the house is run down, that there is not love and care in that house. So I'm really disturbed. And I would like to say, too, that I grant the house looked a whole lot better before all the trees died. They sure did. That house had beautiful big trees, old oak trees. They're all dead now. Mom can't afford to have them cut down, so if anybody, knows anyone that has we can't afford to do it. But they died because the trees in the vacant lot next door were cut and the limbs weren't sealed, even though we asked that they be, and we offered to do it ourselves, and we were told no. So the beetles traveled through, and they got into our yard, and they killed all the trees. And we had the agricultural extension person come out and verify that and said there was nothing that could be done. So thanks to someone who didn't worry about the trees next door, our trees all died. And I just want to point that out because the house did lose some beauty when those trees all died. It didn't help. So thank you.
A point well taken, thank you. Any other comments during the public hearing session?
One quick comment. I drove by the Roaring Dragon today at 12:30 on the dot. There were 5 vacant parking spaces in the immediate first row of parking. In the second row of parking, there were 13 vacant lots, plus 5 that were reserved for government employees. And I believe that's a small restaurant. I don't understand the need for so much parking. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, I'll close this public hearing at 5:51. Commissioners, comments, thoughts?
Well, go ahead, Don.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'll go ahead then. Okay, the issue we have is 2 wrongs don't make a right. The wrong that we have is that the grandfathering of that lot that comes through to Clay Street. It's a residential street. I've driven Clay Street for 50 years, and I've watched it deteriorate and go down some and hope for, and then looked up and here and there. We're trying the best we can to come up with this new comprehensive plan to come up with something. the zoning is, who knows what Kerrville zoning is. I mean, it just takes too long to sit there and sort through it. If you've had any experience in any other city in the state of Texas, this is a different zoning. So that being said, you know, if it's grandfathered, if there's something wrong now, it doesn't do any good to block the whole thing and set it up as a RT whatever, okay? Let's correct what's wrong, let's get the zoning correct, and then we do it right, and then we really look at what it ought to be. And just like, you know, the language in here about what is the requirement for restaurants on parking? Square footage to how many parking places? Can we got an answer for that?
I believe it's one space for every 150 square feet.
And the Roaring Dragon is how big?
The parking requirement was probably set at at an average assumption of retail space is what, I don't know, I don't have an analysis on hand for that.
I would assume that the parking
Center.
was not, for that center, was not specifically set for Roaring Dragon. It was set for the amount of space that's available to be leased in that center.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with the Roaring Dragon.
The usage, the
Correct.
use, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So that being said, so there's another wrong, you know, should have, you know, whatever the use, one way or the other. That's all in the past, and so these are things that need to be corrected before we move forward, and I just don't think that we need to block these two sets of properties together at the same time until we get a little bit better definition of exactly what it is we want to do.
Thank you. Comments?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. You know, the RT zoning is there for a purpose, and it's functioning properly, and I don't think that the fact that someone has a house that needs to be worked on, or the fact that there's trash in the street has nothing to do with the residents that live there. That center was built under, I'm assuming was built under codes and requirements for the city of Kerrville. So I can only assume that when that center was built, that the parking was there was sufficient for what they built. If there's not enough parking now because more people are coming in or those uses has been changed, I don't think that is a concern for the people that live on Clay Street or Murta. I really don't. I think that it's an RT zoning, and the RT zoning is a very attractive zoning, which allows, which the people that live there allow or coexisting with something that has to be built as a residential looking property but can be used as a business. I mean, my opinion is that the RT zoning is there for a reason, and the people that live there are living under that RT zoning, and I don't personally believe that we're responsible to change something for a few people to enhance their commercial use. And I 100% agree that we don't want to bring Sidney Baker commercial zoning back into Clay Street, into any residential area, any RT area. I think we're responsible for trying to, you know, we're looking at a 2050 plan, and it was stated before, we're really looking to intensify or beautify and enhance and make our affordable housing areas that have access for people that can walk to services. I think that's a very big part of the 2050 comprehensive plan, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think that we would be taking a step backwards if we rezone this property to a Sidney Baker N21 zoning.
Tom?
Well, my thoughts are a little bit what Bruce has referred to here. This is a commercial development area because it's residential transition. And we've done that successfully in Kerrville. Bruce talked about it. There are areas where we've been very successful. That property has been transitioning to a residential area if it's done properly by the owner. If you look even on Clay Street, there's several properties there, the counseling center, that have converted over. They're commercial facilities that use this in that way. We're going to always be abutting up to residential areas in a developing city like Kerrville. It's going to happen. We need to plan it, we need to think about it, we need to look at it, not so much as a one-off deal, but a long-term proposition for Kerrville. Kerrville is going to grow whether we want it to or not. It's going to change whether we want it to or not. If we can plan it, if we can manage it better, it's going to be better for all of us. But the impact on those streets that have been there for a long time is going to change. And we need to think about what can we do to reroute the traffic? What can we do to make that a residential area nearby? At some point, you're going to close the area off and not allow commercial development to occur. But there's going to be minor, what I call minor commercial developments, like Bruce's office, that I think are quite attractive, sitting in a residential area. You drive up Earl Garrett and you see them on the left, on the right, and I think they make a nice presentation. But you're transitioning to a residential area. So there is benefit that can be achieved here. But the RT, I think the problem we have in Kerrville is, yes, we have too many codes, we have too many zoning codes, but we also need to think about conditional use permits. I find those useful because the current owner is limited to what he can do for that one purpose. If there's a change in the future, he's got to really present a good case for it. So I think we have to work on this conditional use permit. And it's unfortunate it doesn't apply here, because it should apply here.
No, I agree. I think under the present circumstances, zoning-wise, there's not an easy answer for Mr. Motherall's request for parking. And there are no conditional uses permitted for a parking lot under RT zoning. I think the comprehensive plan, which I'm working on, several of us here are, is taking these things into consideration. But I think RT around Kerrville is working very well. And I think it's something that if you own property that's in the RT zoning, you want to put businesses in there, that there are a lot of things that comply with that zoning that can be considered without opening Pandora's box to full commercial retail business. Any other comments?
I mean, that's a very good point, because as well-intentioned as our two applicants are here for what they want to do, the problem again is, as Sabine and I talked this morning when we were out there, is once you rezone that property to an N21 commercial zoning, whatever's allowed in N21 commercial zoning can be put there. And the city has no, once it's rezoned, the city has no mechanism to stop that. And as well-intentioned as they are for what they want to do, which I agree, if we had a conditional use permit where a parking lot could be put back there for him to use, it would be a great thing. But since we don't, I just don't think it's a good idea to open that up to commercial development beyond what's allowed under RT.
I think our options as a commission are to approve with circumstances or deny to the council. Is that correct?
Yes, under the zoning ordinance, as I mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission is required to make a recommendation before the City Council can take action. There are only 3 options. Adding a lot of conditions and restricting the uses aren't among them. It's basically recommend approval as submitted, the entire thing. Recommend approval as modified, and you can always recommend less area, or a less intense zoning district, and there just isn't that option here, as was discussed in the zoning scheme that we have, or recommend denial. And if there is any additional recommendation, then that needs to come after any of those 3.
All right, any questions? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion that we recommend denial of the zoning change.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign, passes 5-0.
No, 5-1, 4-1. 4-1, I voted against it.
Oh, you voted against? Okay.
I want this conditional use permit.
Okay. So it passes 4-1. Staff report.
I have nothing to add to that. I guess, but before we move on, was there any additional discussion on the conditional
would
use
you make a
permit? Or-
recommendation?
I make a recommendation that we investigate the conditional use permit
agree.
ordinance for this kind of purpose. That parking lots or whatever, and then that'd be parking lots, but conditional use permits should be somehow incorporated into this RT zoning.
Well, what that requires, as I understand it, is a direction to staff to maybe add
Draft
in conditional use text.
Yeah, they'd have to draft something.
And we can bring that discussion back to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a motion then to give directions to staff.
We don't need a motion.
You don't need a motion in there?
Put it on a future agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Say again, I'm sorry?
He's gonna put on the agenda for
We
the
don't need a
future.
motion for that direction. We'll just take a look at it and put that on a future agenda for you.
Very well.
Okay. Staff report, Sabine?
She said she hasn't.
I have nothing to add, except we do have some cases queued up for your next meeting, so we will have
Okay, 2 weeks from today.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. If there's no other business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion, second?
Second.
Have a second? All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
I would